So what's going on, guys? It's Uche and Njoku, sneaker principal, and I'm going on maybe about 2 minutes early because I have no patience. It's been a long day, and I really want to get this episode started. This is not a camera episode, so if you guys are jumping on here because you're thinking that I'm talking about cameras, I hope that you weren't misled by the title of the video, which is, I think it's quitting teaching. Don't quit teaching. Quit bully principles. And that's the video I'm doing this live stream about. For those of you who know or who don't know, I am an educator. It just so happens that my title right now in my career as it stands is principal. I'm the principal of a middle school in the South Bronx. So this is what I do. It's been 20 years, well over 20 years in education. And tonight I want to do a live stream. This might be long, it might be short, I'm not sure. Depends how fast I get through my thought process. But however, it is Teacher Appreciation Week nationwide. And I have to tell you this, as an educator, as a teacher, before anything else, I am a teacher. I came into this profession, at least here in New York City in 2005, and I came in to be a teacher, nothing else other than that. It just so happened that I had specialized skill sets that allowed me to progress from teacher pretty quickly, actually my first day, to dean, and eventually to where I'm at right now. But it doesn't change the fact that I've always been a teacher. I'm not one of those people who want to say, I have a heart for teachers, because I am a teacher. It just so happens that my role, one more time, right now as we stand, is a principal. And all a principal is the lead teacher of a school, as the person who everything falls on their shoulders, because their job is to make sure that everyone in the school, especially teachers, have all the resources, everything they need to be successful. So today, to this evening, I want to talk to you about something that's constantly happening, and it's been kind of the talk of education for the past number of years, prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic made things a little bit worse. Is people walking away from the profession of teaching. And I know it's kind of weird for me to say that, because I walked away myself in 2021, I think, was it? 21? Yeah, 21. No. Yeah, 21. 21, 22, 23. No, 22. I walked away in 22 for the second time, actually, in my career. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I need to get away from this. And the second time I walked away, I was a principal, and I walked away because I need some time away to recompose myself and get myself squared away. And I'm back. About 8 months later, I was back, and I'm doing really well. I'm loving where I'm at right now. I'm doing amazing things with my team at our school, Little Middle School in the South Bronx, District 7, MS224. But however, I want to connect those of you who are watching, listening to this, to my experience. The first time that I left education, and I left because for all intents and purposes, I'm going to call it what it is. I'm not going to mince words. I'm not going to wait. I left because, for the most part, I felt like I was being bullied. No, I didn't feel it. I didn't know I was being bullied. I just knew that I was overwhelmed, and I was going through a lot of things with my leader at the time that made my life very uncomfortable for a couple of years. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had promised my students at the time that I would be with them until they graduated. It was a school that was a turnaround school that found itself about to be closed down. So they brought me and the principal at the time and another school leader who was an assistant principal, I was the dean, brought us into that school in 2000. That was 2008. Yeah, I believe it was 2008. To be part of turning the school around. And we did a great, incredible job. But however, those kids, when we got there, the oldest kids were in 8th grade. It was supposed to be a 6 to 12. So what ended up happening is, a couple years later, the principal who was leading the team decided to move on. So did the assistant principal. I decided to stay. And And the new leader there made life quite interesting. And it wasn't the best of environments for myself. Quite a few people left, but I decided to stay. And I just thought, I was struggling because, I wasn't doing my job well enough, or I wasn't, I couldn't figure out how to meet the expectations that were set for me by my school leader. It's not till years later that I can look back and say, no, I was being bullied. I had a leader whose mental model was one that meant that leadership means that I have to be domineering over you. I have to tear you down, and only build you up when I think it fits my own personal needs. So I've said a lot so far. If you stay with me to this point, I'm going to ask you, if you feel like quitting your job right now, or you're telling yourself it's the end of the school year. For some people, the school year ends in another couple of days or even a couple of weeks. Here in New York, we still have a couple of weeks. We end at the end of we still have actually over a month. We end in late June. But there are people right there right now who are sitting there. There are teachers right now who are sitting there who've spent their whole childhood and college education wanting to be in the classroom, dreaming about being a teacher. And right now they're like, I don't want to do this. And the excuses usually here is like, oh, it's the kids or it's the parents. But the reality, I don't think it's really the kids or the parents. I think often what happens is you don't feel good enough and you don't feel seen or appreciated. But often it's because you don't feel good enough. Those who realize that you're not being seen and not being appreciated tend to be those who are a little bit more self-aware. But often when you don't feel good enough, it's because you don't really get to see, or you're not really seeing what's happening. And what's happening often is because the leader there is someone who's not willing to pour into you or doesn't even know how to pour into you. I've prided myself in my career of being someone as a teacher leader, an administrator, that really worked hard to find that spark in teachers, that spark in people who want to do more, who are working really hard to be great at what they do, and pouring into them, helping them, helping fuel that spark so they can be their greatest version of themselves. But that's not always the case. Often you have leaders who just push and they push and they push until people break. So let's do this. I want to go through a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. If you feel like you're being bullied by your principal or you're being put in a position where it's a lose-lose for you, these are the things you should consider and then actually do. Because I think that quitting is not the answer. The answer is, I'll give you the answer at the end, all right? So first thing you have to do is recognize, are you being bullied? Are you in a position where you have your leader who is literally intimidating you? And my first question to a lot of people that who've come to me for support and for help and for even coaching is, are you able to go talk to your principal or your assistant principals without feeling anxious? Do they create a space for you to feel like you are welcomed in their space or within the school space to be who they hired? Most schools, I would hope, are not hiring automatons. They're hiring people who, during the interview, through the hiring process, exhibit skill sets and abilities and personalities that they were like, we want you to be part of our school. So with that being said, I'm pretty sure there was a period of time in the beginning, at least, where you felt like, hey, I love this. This is awesome. You're calling your friends, your families, you're telling your husbands, your wives, like, oh, this school's going to be amazing. Like, I love everything about this opportunity. But then at some point in time, it just kind of spirals down and you're like, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I'm not good enough. All of a sudden, I'm struggling. All of a sudden, every time someone walks into my classroom, I'm having heart palpitations and I'm just riddled with anxiety. Often, more so than none, is because an environment is being created that perpetuates that, where you are made to feel less than, and it's made to be your fault. You're not doing this, you're not doing that. And yes, I know there's some people out there, and there's some leaders out there who are going to hear this and say, Uche, you're overdoing it. There's a lot of teachers out there who are bad and don't do this and don't do X, Y, Z. But I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about good teachers who are trying their best, especially those who are early in their career, or maybe in some cases they might be mid-career. They're people who've been teaching for a long time because of all the changes in the landscape of the technology in education, that they all of a sudden feel like they're by themselves. They're trying to learn all of a sudden how to use technology, they're trying to learn how to use software and all these different things, and they're struggling. They try, in some cases, they're even trying to understand the changing culture of children and society, and they're struggling. And what ends up happening, you have leaders who just say, you're not keeping up, you're not doing your job. And rather than looking into that person and saying, like, what's really going on here? Like, what can I do? What can we do to support your growth, or even retrain and whatever it takes to get you to where you need to be, so you can be the best person, so you can be the best version of yourself in the classroom? Often, that's not being done. So all of a sudden, a teacher feels like, man, I'm by myself in this. I don't want to do this anymore, and they just kind of like let it go. They become resolute to like walking away. And the crazy thing about it is, how many teachers can walk away before realize that there's more harm being done to the profession, because those walking away and those who are staying, the numbers don't add up. And I really believe that often those who walk away is because we're, as leaders, are not doing a good enough job to really support and grow them and giving them feedback and working with them and being patient in their development or redevelopment. And the impact of all this, like again I've said, is that eventually there won't be anyone there. And mind this, those who walk away and talk about their walking away and why they walk away, they leave stories, they leave breadcrumbs out there for future potential educators who then say, man, I don't know if I want to do this. This might be too much. I don't want to experience that. And if you don't believe me, look online. Go on TikTok. Go on Instagram. Go to your favorite social media platform and and search teachers leaving education or teachers quitting. And you will find thousands, tens and hundreds of thousands of posts out there, people who are just fed up. And my question is, what is a common factor? And often you hear, my administration. And I've never understood that. Have I ever had anyone complain about me as an administrator? Yes, it's going to happen. Not everyone's going to be happy with me. But I like to think that more so than not have actually appreciated the work and my approach to supporting teachers. I've had teachers who have been literally ripped apart. So when they came to me, they were just kind of like in fear. And my job was to say no. Like, whatever happened with that other administrator, I have to leave that alone in its own space. I have to now support you as a teacher. So it's very important that you, as a teacher who might be going through bullying, realize the impact it's having on you, and the ultimate impact is you want to leave the profession, right? But then the other thing too now is, you're identifying that you're potentially being bullied, or your leader has bullying tendencies or behaviors that's impacting you and other teachers. Now you want to leave, but now you understand the impact of that behavior. The question now is, what do you do next? Do you stay? Do you leave? Do you just say, I quit? I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I don't want to be this thing that I've committed time and energy and education and master's degrees to doing because I've always wanted to impact the future generation. But now one person or a system of people are creating a space that becomes very hard for you to stay and or even want to go to work. So you have to explore your options. And yes, one of the options is quitting, is saying, I'm good, I don't want to do this anymore. But there's another option. That option is exploring yourself. Asking, if things are this bad right now, and I'm really not enjoying what I'm doing, what do I need to do to enjoy? Because if you're already thinking about quitting and you're saying, I don't want to do this anymore, it's just stressing everything else, and you're unhappy, what would make you happy? What would allow you to take control of you in that space so you can be the best version of yourself as an educator, as a teacher? And that's something I'm going to say to you that there's no easy answer to. It's going to require a lot of introspection and reflection and really, talking through it, with your colleagues, with a mentor or a coach, but also, in some cases, you might get some therapy. But nonetheless, an option that I've always advocated for is pushing back. Pushing back. We always tell children, the way you deal with a bully is not backing down. Sometimes you might have to fight that bully. It doesn't mean that you have to fight them physically, but you might have to say, you know what, I'm standing my ground, and I am going to, for everything that you tell me I'm doing wrong, I am going to push back by saying, hey, how do I do it right then? Show me, how do I do that right then? I want to get better. Coach me, support me, and be unwavering about it. Because if you're going to quit regardless, or if that's an option on the table, then why not just say, you know what, I'm going to be bold and fearless and push back and seek support, seek, guidance, seek the space to be created for me to grow. Why is that important? Because many years ago, early in my career, I was in a position where I had another leader who kind of created that kind of environment for me as a new teacher. I was a first year dean, but I was also teaching classes, and as any first year teacher, you're trying to figure out your craft, especially if you come into education the non-traditional route. I came in through an alternative certification, which meant I didn't have the year or two of student teaching. I had summer program, you're in a classroom, and over the next 2 years, we'll work on your pedagogy through graduate classes, and you'll have your master's, but you're building your bus as you're driving it. And I remember one time I had a assistant principal come to my classroom, and here I am. It must have been my second or third lesson that I ever taught, period. I'm teaching this lesson, and I'm sweating bricks. The kids are staring at me. I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. I've never done this before. I've been in the military. I've done sales, but this is different when you have middle schoolers staring at you. And all you can think to yourself is that I think I sound really dumb right now. And they're looking at me like I'm really dumb right now. And I remember going through the struggle of just trying to teach this lesson. And I remember the assistant principal sitting there staring at me. All of a sudden, she started to act like she was one of the students and started raising her hand, asking all kinds of questions to throw me off. And I remember just feeling like, wow, is she really doing this right now? I'm already having a hard enough time just trying to keep things together. But she's going to now kind of throw a wrench in what I'm doing and also even question me as I'm trying to teach, like being that annoying student. And I remember afterwards just being like, feeling defeated. And then she's asking for a one-on-one sit down to kind of give me some feedback. And I'll be honest with you, maybe at that moment in time, it wasn't the right thing to do. But I remember being so frustrated that I questioned her. I said, why would you do that? I said, I'm going through this whole entire thing. This is my second or third lesson. This is really, really hard. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm in an alternative certification program. I've never taught before. And I felt you were trying to sabotage me or make me look dumb in the space. And I thought she would have said, no, that's never my intention. She said, because you were doing a horrible job. I remember saying to her, I think first thinking to myself, horrible job? Yeah, I'm doing a horrible job. I'm brand new at this. Who jumps on a bike for the second time, and all of a sudden is riding the bicycle perfectly? I would have expected her to come and say, hey, I saw what you did today. Here's some glows, some things you did really well. Here's some growth area that we can work on to develop. Here's some feedback, some tools, and some things I can give you to help you be better. And she didn't do that. And the outcome was, at first I thought she was going to kind of like be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, that's disrespectful, that's insubordinate. But what ended up happening was, we walked away from that conversation, and she was very careful about how she approached me when she came to my classroom. Because at that point in time, I always felt like, hey, I'm in trouble. I pushed back against the assistant principal. I'm the new teacher, so she's going to give me hell. So I'm just going to keep questioning and asking for support, which means that I have to follow through on the support I was given, and that became kind of like my mode of operation. And fast forward to when I was in the situation where I left education. At that point in time, I was an assistant principal, and I was in a situation where that leader was just not necessarily giving me horrible feedback, but creating a situation that was very, very difficult. And again, very similar. I just didn't see it as bullying, but some people are just bullies, and this is what they do. And thankfully, both times eventually saw what it was I eventually saw what it was and what was happening. And I was able to advocate for myself. And that's the next thing. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to demand the support you need. If you're going to quit anyway, or if you feel like you can get fired anyway, you might as well seek for support, which means that you're not only seeking for support, but you're also documenting your searching for support. One of the things that a lot of teachers do is that you find yourself having these long conversations with people who are supposed to support you, but they're not. Put it in an email. I'm telling you, power of documentation. Put it in an email. Seek support in that email. Be respectful, be reverent, but seek an advocate for yourself. Ask for support. Say, hey, I need help with this. How do I become better at this thing? That you're telling me I'm not good at, or this thing that I'm struggling with. But then, if that doesn't pan out for you, you don't have to leave teaching, unless you're in a space where this is the only school in where you live and you have no other options. I'm always an advocate for find a better place, find another place. I've worked in 7 schools in my career, and some schools sucked. Not the school itself, not the kids, not the school community, but the leaders really sucked. And I was like, I cannot work for this person ever again or anybody like it. So what did I do? I found somewhere else. In some cases, I had to drive further away than where I lived, because this is what I do. This is who I am. I am a teacher. I am an educator. So I refuse to be pushed out of my profession. I had to find somewhere else. And I found somewhere else several times. But the one thing that was been great about that is when you find a supporting environment, you learn from it. I've been able to learn from these different spaces and kind of like put it into my practice as a school leader, because if I was seeking a supportive environment, if I was seeking a space that I could advocate for myself, if I was seeking for a place where I wasn't going to get bullied, that means when I became a leader, I couldn't repeat those things that I hated that I went through. So in my space, I work very hard to create a space where people are being supported. And even when people do wrong, outside of something that's super illegal, not even super, it's just legal, where I can lose my license, I give people grace, and we try to work out how to fix so that it doesn't happen again. Hopefully, by doing these things, you continue to reaffirm your passion for teaching. That's the one thing that's very, very important. Like I say again, teaching is not a job. It is a life's work. As an educator, this has never been a job, because there are jobs out there that pay way more than this. But we do this because this is our passion. This is who we are. This is the core, how we think. I know we're consummate teachers. We're always supporting. We're always trying to grow people, especially children. So again, from the beginning, you want to identify that behavior. Are you being bullied at work? Are you in an environment that's bullying? Then you need to also understand, how is it affecting you? Because you might say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to quit. But are you quitting because you're being pushed out and you don't even know it? And the person who's pushing you out might not even know they're pushing you out, because that's just their behavior. But then you have to explore your options. Quitting is not always the answer. In some cases, it's the only option you have, but it doesn't have to be. And if you're going to quit regardless, or that's an option on the table, then might as well advocate for yourself. Stand up for yourself and advocate, push, seek, ask for support, demand it. And then if that doesn't work, find another space. Find a supportive environment, a place you can go to where where hopefully it's better than where you're coming from, and you be given an opportunity to really grow and develop. And in some cases, you might have to jump through 4 or 5 different places to find the right fit. The first school is never always the perfect fit, because you don't know what you know until you know what you know. And sometimes it might take second or third place before you're like, oh, this is what I was looking for. But I didn't know what I didn't want then, but I know what I don't want now. So now I'm in the right place. And the goal here is to reaffirm your passion for teaching and constantly reaffirm that. During your bad days, take a deep breath. And I do this thing where I do 20 breaths, 20 exaggerated breaths when I'm stressed, so I can take a break, recompose myself, and assess the situation and move forward. Unfortunately, what we do as teachers is not what's the word? It's stressful. It can be stressful, but I also believe stress is a choice. If you know where you are and you know why you're there, then stress shouldn't impact you. But if you're in a space where you're just floundering and you're just trying to figure yourself out, then stress will overtake and dominate you. So hopefully this was helpful for someone who's listening. There's a lot of teachers out there, 3 million of us out there, and a lot of us are struggling. So I'm going to ask, if you come across this video and you have a friend or someone who is going through it themselves, share this video with them so they can hear from a principal who's telling them, as a teacher, I'm a teacher too, and I hate it when it was done to me, and these are some advice that I can give you on how to handle those situations when you're in that position. And this doesn't just apply to teachers. It applies to anyone in any profession. It also applies to administrators, APs. You might have a principal who's a bully. So, principals, you might have a superintendent who's a bully. And a lot of times, bullies don't know they're bullies. They just think they're just doing what they do because that's who they are, until they are made to be aware of their actions and the impact it has on others, especially adults, especially in the professional space. And I've seen this across the board. When I was in the military, when I was in corporate sales, across the board, these things that happen. But however, what I've shared with you are steps you can take to make sure, even if you get pushed out or you just have to quit, at least you stood up for yourself. I'm going to go to the comments real quick. Solomon, my brother, I see you. Good evening to you. You wrote in here, I did an alternative teaching program as well. My first principal did the same thing to me. She would come into my classroom and stand in the middle of the room and just glare at me. Listen, brother, I can tell you this. I've had that done to me so many times. I'll tell you this story real quick. When I was in Vegas, so when I left the first time from education, what happened, I didn't leave education, I just left New York City. And I was like, I am good. So I left New York City and I got a job offer in Las Vegas. So when I went to Las Vegas, I was told there was an offer for me to be a high school principal. I said, cool. I got out there. It fell through. Apparently the person who I was supposed to replace decided not to retire. And they were like, all we have for you is a assistant principal position at elementary school. So mind you, up until that point, I've only worked middle school and high school, nothing about elementary school. So then what made things worse is that at that point in time, this principal didn't hire me. I'm coming from a city in New York where principals hire their assistant principals. In some cases, you might have an assistant principal placed at your school, and it's for a temporary basis, but you eventually hire your administrative team. So when I got to the school, and I found out I was being placed there permanently as the assistant principal. So I met the principal. My first day there is when I met the principal. Very awkward, because all of a sudden it's like, I don't know you, you don't know me, and the relationship between the principal and assistant principal is very personal, because there's a lot of need to know situations that only flow between both of you. So I get there and she gives me this look, first of all, like I was like a jack-o'-lantern, like I was like a monster with a giant jack-o'-lantern head. And the first thing she did, and she saw my resume, she knew what my background was. She said, "Okay, you're gonna be responsible for pre-K through second." I was like, pre-K through second? I know nothing about pre-K. I know nothing about kindergarten. I didn't even go to kindergarten. I barely remember first grade. Second was the worst year of my life. Third grade is when I got thrown into special education. So I'm sitting here thinking like, this is a nightmare. Like I could, you know how they say the devil you know is better than the angel that you don't know. So the devil back in New York that I ran away from, at that moment in time, I was like, that was better than this. And I just remember, like, from day one, she would just pop up and do the arm crossed and stare at me. And I'd be like, what is she staring at? So I'd have cafeteria duty. And I'll be in the cafeteria again. Never done this before. I've never had to open kids' milk boxes. So I'll open kids' milk boxes. It was the kindergartners, and these kids couldn't open their milk boxes. They couldn't open their potato chips bags. So I'm walking around doing all these things, and she was just standing there and glare. And what made things worse is like I was like one of 3.5 Black people on staff. It was a pretty big school, and the whole entire staff was primarily white, more Latinos than Blacks, but it was like 3 of us. So here I am, the assistant principal, and then I realized I was one of the few Black administrators in Clark County schools in Nevada at that time, and I was like, this is nuts. So for me, just me being self-conscious, I was like, why is she staring at me? But at the same time, I look back and I realize, and I know it was her way of trying to intimidate me. It was her way of trying to get into my head. And luckily, by that time, I already had 3 or 4 years under my belt as a New York City administrator. So I've seen it all. You know, I've taken guns from kids, taken knives from kids. I've seen kids bleed. I've seen, like, I've damn near had to perform CPR on a student who I thought was like not breathing. Like, this is the space I'm coming from, and still be the instructional leader, and still be, you know, the compassionate leader, and still be the coach and all these different things. And I brought that into that space. And this woman would find ways to try to get into my head. And I just remember being like, man, this is rough. And I'll tell you this, that was the example of somebody being a bully. She was definitely a bully. There was one time when, and one of the things, I won't lie, I did enjoy that year. I worked there for only a year. I did enjoy the kids. It was amazing. The teachers were dope. It took a few months for them to get, not months, a few weeks for them to get to warm up to me, because my style was different. And I don't think that had someone who had my experience, my skill sets and my experience coming from New York and in spaces I've worked in. So one of the things I loved about the school that they would do is they had a tradition that every day they would have morning assembly outside if it wasn't raining. It was Las Vegas, so it rarely rained. And each homeroom would do a presentation. So they would do a Pledge of Allegiance and everything else. Parents would be out there. And each homeroom would do a little performance for the parents out in the yard in the morning. And kids would do poems, they'd do dances. I mean, and this is all, like, you know, organized by the teachers of that homeroom. And I remember one day, it was the kindergartners, and I'll be honest with you, I don't remember what they did. There were so many events, too many performances, but I don't remember what they did. I think they were doing a poem or some kind of like interpretive dance. It was really cute. But my 5th graders were being a bunch of knuckleheads. And kids were laughing, and one of the kindergartners was trying to do their poem, and they forgot their line, and they got really scared. And one of the 5th graders had a loud outburst. So parents looking at the 5th graders, and they're not happy, because usually the kids who are performing, it's their parents who are usually there. And I remember standing there thinking, like, man, this is really messed up. These kids work really, really hard, and these babies are here just, you know, trying to perform for you, you know, trying to do good. And you're here laughing at them. So after the performance was all done and we ended morning assembly, did our Pledge of Allegiance, and all the kids were starting to go back to class, I asked for the 5th graders to stay behind. And I looked at the teachers, and they looked at my face, and I could see the same disappointment that they had, that I was feeling about the 5th graders. I saw it in their faces. And I walked up to them and I said, guys, and that's what I said. I said, I don't want to ever see you do that again. Those little kids worked so hard to do what they did. And I feel like you've forgotten what it felt like to be a kindergartner. Maybe you forgot what it felt like to be a little person looking at all these eyes staring at you. And maybe you forgot your line. We shouldn't be laughing. We should be cheering them on. And that's what I said. And one of the parents stayed back and overheard what I said and said, "Thank you, Mr. Njoku. Nice lot. Thank you, Mr. Njoku." And I won't lie, I ignored the parent because I didn't want to feed into that, but I just wanted to pour into my fifth graders, the grace and also the wisdom of, hey, you're the big brothers and sisters. You're the senior class in the school. You gotta do better. So after that, I had the click-clacks of the principal's shoes walking behind me. As I turned on, because I thought it was an emergency, the way she was moving. She came up to me and she's like, "I need to talk to you right now." I'm like, "What happened?" And she's like, and at that moment in time, she didn't even wait for the kids to leave. She's like, "How dare you talk to the kids like that? Like, that is corporal punishment. Like, the way you just spoke to them." I was like, "What?" It was funny because the teachers actually stopped and they were like, and even they were like, "What?" The funny thing is the kids themselves were looking at me like, "What just happened here?" But the kids themselves recognized the flaw in their behavior in that moment in time and how they behaved around the kindergartners and by laughing at them. And this woman wrote me up for corporal punishment. I was investigated for corporal punishment. It was unfounded because all the witnesses there said that is not what happened. And a parent actually stepped up and said, "Listen," and again, that one parent stayed around and was like, what just happened here? And I just remember thinking to myself, like, wow, I can't do right by this woman. You gave me pre-K, you gave me the lower grades to supervise, I'm doing it. The teachers are loving my feedback. As a matter of fact, I would write observations and she would tell me it was way too long. I'm like, how's it way too long? If my feedback to teachers are extensive, unless teachers are telling me it's way too long, I'm going to continue to be extensive because I want to see them grow. I want to support them. And the fact that you're here upset because you do a checklist with them, and I'm sitting here saying, this is how I was trained. I was trained to give teachers extensive, actionable feedback. I was trained to be very clear on what moves they should be making to improve. I would meet with them afterwards and sit down and talk with them, and not just give them a piece of paper with a checklist saying, "Hey, go get better." And she didn't like that. And I can't tell you what I did. I advocated for myself. I asked, eventually I had to ask them to meet with her and the area superintendent to have a conversation. And I won't lie, it backfired. It did backfire because that conversation, even though the allegation of corporal punishment was unfounded, that action led to my contract not being renewed. But however, I don't regret, because if my contract had been renewed, I would have stayed there and probably would not have returned back to New York, where I eventually became a principal and I am who I am today. So yeah, you gotta stand up for yourself in those spaces. You gotta make sure that you don't let people define for you who you are. There are bullies out there, and there are tons of bullies in education. The sad part of it about it is a lot of them don't know, and they're only replicating how they were treated as teachers, thinking that's the way to lead. And I'll say to you, absolutely freaking not. That's not how you lead. You lead with compassion, you lead with clarity, and you lead with high expectations, but you also need to know when to say, hey, this is not working, with evidence to say, hey, this is the support I've given you, these are the attempts we've made, and this is why it's not working. And also give people the space and chance to advocate for themselves, but you can't just from day one turn to people and expect them to want to do better. You can't lead with fear. I can tell you right now, you can't lead with intimidation. It just doesn't work. I'm yet to meet that school leader who is great, who has been able to be successful by doing that. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to share with you. Hopefully this is helpful to someone out there who's watching. My photography and camera followers, I do apologize. I am still a principal, and from time to time, I will be making videos like this. And from now, so pretty much anytime you see a live stream, that is all about education. My normal videos will pretty much from now on be about cameras and technology and the things that I do in my school around technology as well. And with that being said, have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Be well. Peace.